All right. I really don't know how long this video could possibly be. Um, Everybody has discussed this topic. We've identified who and what a Ray Ray and Pookie is. But one thing I don't think that everybody knows, and I pointed it out yesterday, people don't understand that Ray Ray and Pookie was actually created by an educated lame. Now, also, I also like to add that the term Ray Ray and Pookie, I noticed a lot of people have embraced being a Ray Ray and Pookie. Um, man, educated lames, right? This is an educated lame argument. Educated lames are the only ones who point out Ray Ray and Pookie. So when you have an individual who looks at the word educated lame as being an oxymoron, like, well, it's more like a misnomer where these two words don't go together because being educated isn't lame. Well, why do people talk about all of these stereotypes so much, right? And this is where I'm gonna kind of like break down all the other stuff, like the whole Steve Urkel and the Carlton thing. Yeah, we all understand that these are not real people, but what they do is they tend to represent certain people that we all know personally. Some people may live different lives, and I am fortunate enough to actually kind of like have the best sides of both worlds because I lived in the hood, I've lived in the suburbs too, around predominantly white people. So to a certain extent, I can be a Carlton. Like I can actually be viewed as a Carlton to, and I actually was to a lot of people in the hood in New Orleans. It's in some cases, like even with my brothers, I was considered a Carlton to a certain extent because I stayed on one side of town, and they stayed in the hood, and I was interested in different things. Like when they would come around to my house, they were afraid of like alligators and different animals, and just my thought process was more broader than theirs. Um, but there's a whole different dynamic when we talk about Carlton, and we'll get to that. But I just want to tell you that educated lames, honestly, the people who really understand what Ray Ray and Pookie and educated lame means and why we make those comparisons, because if you really think about it, it really boils down to women and how women view black men. And it's not really how women view black men later on in life. We're talking about middle school, high school, college years. We're talking about from maybe the ages of 13 to shit 31, 32. You know, and I just don't get it. I just don't understand like how people can get older in life, and that's another part of the whole Ray Ray and Pookie argument. When we talk about when educated lanes, when we talk about how these women give up their good years to low life men, to rogue men that are out here, have babies by them, and then all of a sudden it's like that same educated lane that you wanted to talk to, in a rude way back in high school. You called him a nerd, you called him a dork. He did something with his life. He wasn't the most popular person in school, and now all of a sudden he is somebody. And when you run into these girls, sometimes they have gotten immensely overweight, they're on drugs, they have multiple kids, and you're like, oh my God, no, no way, no way. I mean, even with me going back home to New Orleans, sometimes I see that shit. I haven't seen like a lot of these people in years sometimes, and I come back and I'm like, oh goodness. So that is an educated lame argument. I mean, that really sums it up. Some people, they believe that being educated is a lame, and I totally agree. But there's no way, and I know this personally because I realized when I would be in my own personal life and I would talk to people personally about Ray Ray and Pookie, Sometimes I've even told Ray Ray and Pookie's this, and I'm surprised how even some YouTubers would do it as well, where they appreciate being a Ray Ray and Pookie. And it always boils down to the point that, hey, I'm getting more bitches being a Ray Ray and Pookie. I get the better selection of women. Now, there are little pockets of women that are out there who, they may get with a brother who has, more of an intellect, where, his mind is more acceptive to things in life. But for the most part, you know, I noticed with me, most black women growing up, it was really simple with them. They wanted a man who could take control. They wanted a man who was confident. And, these are some of the things that we say, to educated lanes, because it boils down to, like the argument that Obsidian and I had, right? Where Obsidian feels like, hey, you know what? I have the money. I should be able to get the better woman. And it just doesn't work like that, man. Not in the black community, it doesn't, unfortunately. You go to Oriental communities and Arab communities. These people, they're like, look, if you're not a doctor, you're not a lawyer, or you're not an engineer, you can't get with my daughter. You know, with us, it's more of, what do you have right now? It's more based on the physicality of things. So, should it stop? I say yeah, and this is an educated lame's argument. But a lot of educated lames, they just feel like, well, I have the money now, but there's another component that's missing, and unfortunately, the black community operates differently than everyone else. So they are, like I said, small pockets, because someone who was raised in the suburbs, or they were raised a different way. Because I know with me, when I moved to the suburbs, I actually stayed across the street from a family. It was a grown man. It was a wife in the house, and there were two daughters in the house, right? Both of the daughters were like around my age. Like one was like 1 year older than me, and the other one was like 3 years younger than me, right? But I never spoke to him because my mom was a single mother. She had her own house. She was paying two car notes, and even back then, at the age of 13, 14, I felt to myself like, man, I I'm a smart guy, and I'll get into something else too, which is like real personal, and it's kind of strange that I did it, but and my mom kind of checked me on it, but I would never really talk to that girl or those girls, and the reason why I didn't do it is because I didn't directly have a father in the house. And I understood, like, that whole story about the prom thing where, the man is outside with the flowers and he doesn't want to go and talk to the father. And the father's like, hey, if you want to go out with my daughter, you better bring your ass up here. It was that type of dynamic. But, I mean, I still talked to him, but I never really, got close to his daughters. I would see him and say, hey, so I just showed myself that I can be a stand right, upright, well-to-do type of guy. Didn't get in any trouble, but there were a few Ray Ray and Pookies who lived in that neighborhood, because this one particular woman, I don't know what the hell she did, but she had a two-story house, four-bedroom house, and she had two sons and a daughter. The daughter used to run the streets wild and crazy. They had no father in the house. My mom would always tell me to stay away from them. They were much older than I was. At the time, I was 15, and the older guy, the oldest one in the house, he was like 20 years old, 21 maybe. And my little brother, if he's listening, he knows what I'm talking about. I don't know if these dudes are dead or alive. They came straight from New Orleans, Fisher Projects, and a lot of people in the neighborhood thought that they were living on Section 8, and they felt like they were bringing the property value down. The one that I hung out with the most was the 18-year-old one, and my mom bought my brother and I a basketball goal. So we put the cement down. Had the basketball go there, so some of the kids would come play, and they would come play as well. Now my little brother and I, we had a lot of street smarts, and we knew what the hood was like. We fought with some of the kids in the neighborhood, but it was them, and there was this other guy who lived across the street from me. Now he was also a Ray Ray and Pookie. In fact, he wasn't even a Ray Ray. He was a straight up Pookie. The two dudes who lived a few doors down from me, they were straight up Ray Rays, you know. But the guy who stayed across from me, like kind of cat a corner from me, this guy was definitely a Pookie. Now the story with him is the man who owned the house was a single man. He was an older guy. He was like maybe in his 50s, 60s. He found him a woman who had a child. The boy who I am talking about was 17 years of age. Didn't want to go to school. Had women all inside of the house. Him and the other guys, they would hang out together. They would hang out with me as well. Like, I was the youngest one, and like the women that they brought around, it was just like so many to count. I would never fuck around with them. Sometimes they would like come out the bedroom and throw the fucking panties and shit of the other broad on me, and I'm like, man, get that shit out of my face. I would, at that time I was just, kind of like just joking around with them. I learned a lot from them. And even with the Pookie guy that I'm talking about, he was a lover boy. He didn't fight. He was like this, you know, light skinned, pretty boy type of guy. Always got a haircut like every 2 or 3 days and shit. All of the ladies loved him. And, that's just what it was. Me, on the other hand, it was like, well, yeah, he's cute, but, man, why is he so quiet? Like, I wasn't really rude to women growing up. I wasn't shy. I just had my own way of doing things. Um, and I just figured, like, relationships took time. It really did. They took time. I didn't know until later on that it was like, this instant factor, where, if you want it, you better get it right now, because if you're not, then, you might lose her forever. Women are like, well, I know I look good. Shit, why is he hollering at me right now? He must not want none of this. Well, fuck you then. This is how it was. So, it took me a while to kind of like understand that, because again, I didn't really have a father in the house. My stepfather was in and out of jail. My mom would kick him out of the house a lot. We moved around from place to place. So, I didn't really have that. I mean, I had my grandfather, but my grandfather was a pimp. Both of them married several times. Both of my grandfathers married 3 times apiece. My grandmother too. She married about 3 times. I never wanted that shit for me. So growing up, with a mindset of wanting to change things and break the mold, yeah, I didn't want to be, considered a Pookie. Never wanted to be considered a Ray Ray either. And the whole Ray Ray and Pookie thing comes along once you start getting with these women. We never talk about the educated lames who get these women. I mean, I'm pretty sure that there are educated lames out there who get the woman. From my experience, I knew this guy in high school, and I don't want to say too many stories, but I knew this guy in high school. He was in ROTC. He was on his way to the Army, and he and I, like, we had classes together. He was a jokester, man. Like, I mean, he was the ugliest dude I've seen in my fucking life, man. Just dark as fuck, had all these wrinkles in his face and shit. All of his teeth were, like, separated, and he would joke the fuck out of everybody. Like, we would sit in the back of the class, and he would just go on and on and on, and it was a lot of shit he said was funny. I used to think that he got in a lot of trouble because sometimes, the teacher would kick us out of the classroom, and, we would be in detention and shit, and, he was just a funny dude. Towards the end, because he always talked about his girlfriend and how his girlfriend wasn't black, and, would I consider him a Ray Ray and Pookie? Hell no. Would I consider him an educated lame? Hell no. Because I knew, like, he wasn't heavy in the streets like that. He kind of looked like Soulja Slim too, by the way, man. If anybody knows who Soulja Slim looked like, he looked like Soulja Slim. And but he just had this confidence about him, right? So towards the end of the school year, I finally met his girlfriend because I went to like one of the biggest high schools in the state, the biggest. So I saw him. I was walking down the hallway, and he was hugged up with his girlfriend, which was a Vietnamese girl, and I was like, "Whoa, what the fuck?" And my whole thought process about interracial dating, I always thought about him. You know, the classes that I took in high school, I was around a lot of Vietnamese girls. I was around a lot of Mexican girls, a lot of white girls, and the sisters. They were just there were a few of them, but the sisters were looking at the jocks. So, I was told one day, recently that they people want to hear what I have gone through personally, right? So the black women, like I've never had a crush growing up in school. I've never had a crush on other races of women, right? I always thought about it later, like, Ming Ming, she's kind of all right, you know. April, she's kind of all right, but I never really looked at them as something that I should have been sexually attracted to. I'd be 100 with you. The women back then in school that I was attracted to were the black women. And, it was weird because these black women knew who I was, too. One girl, man, she actually knocked on my door when I was in middle school. And I used to see her around in the hallway and shit. And her family was trying to start this business and they needed a petition signed. So they knocked on my door. And my mom called me downstairs to help her and sign the petition. And then she was like, "Hey, Sam," and my voice cracked. I was like, "What?" "Hey, Tuesday." That was her name. Her name was Tuesday. And, it was just like, I know how she is. And I know how she lives now. She's not doing too well. But I knew the type of men that she liked. It was just kind of weird that she knew who I was, you know. But yeah, she's not doing too well. She's another one, like, single mom, like, what, 4 kids. I think one of them is grown now. And I've ran into her, and I'm like, "Hey, how you doing? Now, do I have the crush on her now?" No, not at all. The crushes, they usually fade away. They fade away. I don't know how. I don't think people have a crush on somebody no longer than a year and a half, maybe. But this is the all educated lame arguments. This is not something that we look bad upon, as we get older. We tend to appreciate it. Would I even be considered a Ray Ray and Pookie? I would say that sometimes I would definitely be considered a Ray Ray, and other times I would be considered an educated lame. It is definitely balanced when it comes down to me. I know a lot of people who are definitely what people would consider lame. Um, Growing up, I would, have certain friends that I would draw with, discuss politics with, have these intellectual conversations. But I could never bring the street dudes around. Or whenever these educated brothers did come around, they felt uncomfortable, you know. So I was even asked, a few times, "Man, why you hang with that dude, man? Man, that dude lame. Why you hang with him?" I used to always get this. Did I think it was wrong? I always did. Have I come across to a lot of the street guys? I have. Can't tell you how many people who have thanked me later on. Like, some of these dudes went to prison, came out, and they were like, "Man, what you used to say back in the day, man, you was right, man. I was in there thinking about that shit." Or, the letters that I would get from some people. Some of these people are no longer here anymore, but the letters and the phone calls that I would get, and they would be like, "Yeah, man, you were right about this, man. You were absolutely correct." I appreciated all of that. All right, sorry about that. I was distracted, but yeah, it's like, I appreciated those people coming back saying, you know what, Sam, you were right. I should never have gone down that path, man. I should have listened to you back then, man. You used to say some real shit. I get that a lot, right? So, um, the term, man, I honestly think that it's classic and it cannot be changed. The beauty of it is that it was created by an educated lame. It's an educated lame argument, and rogue men, street thugs, they have all taken on to it as well, and they appreciate it. Why do they appreciate it? Because of the social dynamics that's involved. They are getting the women. So the thing about the whole educated lame thing, a lot of people grow out of being an educated lame. The older they get, they start gaining more confidence about themselves. They understand how to move throughout the world socially. They learn more about protecting themselves, protecting their environment, and they just become stable brothers at that time, at that point. Does a Ray Ray and Pookie grow out of it? Yeah, some of them do. But the educated lame argument, it comes up. This is something that I never really told to children. I never say the educated lame versus the Ray Ray and Pookie to kids in middle school or high school. I've never done it. I felt that there was another way to come about it. In fact, I don't lay out any issues about it. I just tell them how to move, how to think, what to do. And it's just something that I never really gave any thought about. It's just the way I felt about it. I always felt that the Ray Ray and Pookie and educated lame argument was rated R. And it's a conversation that we have once we've made it out of just being socially awkward, maybe, or antisocial. Once we've gotten out of understanding how a woman works, or once we were able to become more independent for ourselves and have something that we can call our own, and we go back and we see, well, I finally got my shit together. Let me go and find me a beautiful woman, and the pickings are slim. This is an educated lame argument. There's nothing else outside of that. This cannot be changed. All right? Again, the word educated and the word lame should not go together. I agree. But it was necessary, A lot of us, the way we talk on YouTube as black men, it's like, especially during the gender war, which I don't know if a lot of people actually remember that shit, but that was years ago. But educated lames seem to be throughout YouTube as far as like the black men. If you really think about it, a lot of these guys, they want to talk about how educated they are. They want to talk about how much swag they have, and it's like people want to have the best of both worlds. I'm actually giving you a portion of my life here. Being an educated lame when I was coming up, I swear to God, like I'm telling you, like these women, yeah, I mean, he act like a lame. I used to get that shit. I used to think it was funny, because he wasn't gonna change me. Like if you think I'm weird, you ought to meet my brother. I mean, I got my brother on one of these videos, and he'll tell you too. Like he doesn't drink. He's never drunk a day in his life. He's never smoked a day in his life. He's 34 years old. He used to be a badass in school. Very educated brother. And he balances it out. He knows how to balance the two. And it was something that we both had to learn growing up, And we appreciate it coming out. We don't have any kids. Coming out of, the situations that we had growing up. It's a beautiful thing. We don't have any kids. We look at my niece is our child. And it's because of when we finally realized how the world operated within the type of people that we were. We understood that a lot of things didn't match up. And I mean, we didn't go out here complaining about, oh man, it's not, the pickings are slim and it's not good. Like, we just accepted it and just kind of live with it. Now the problem he and I have is the whole baby mama thing. Um, but we've kind of talked about that too. That's a whole nother discussion, man. I mean, I've been talking to a couple guys about that, and we've even did some studies about women who have sons versus women who have daughters, and being around that. And I actually have a buddy of mine who's kind of able to prove some of this shit to me just by experience. But yeah, I just want to just kind of like do that. I'm tired of doing these Ray Ray and Pookie videos. If you notice, it's been a while since I've even done them myself. I think we've covered everything. You know, if people don't understand what Ray Ray and Pookie is at this point, I'm sorry. you know, educated lames, like there's just two types of them right now. First of all, educated lames they don't mind being called an educated lame. It doesn't really bother them because some of them they feel like, you know what, well fuck it, I got money, I don't give a fuck. The other portion of them, they're like, yeah, you know what, I was like that until I learned that, you know what, I have to build up my myself as a person. I got to work out. I got to be more assertive. And look at me now. So the only thing we can really do, and I don't think that it's really happening the way it was when I was growing up, because the education system has definitely changed, and not only that, peer pressure I think it's gotten worse to the point where anyone who is considered an educated lame in middle school and high school, especially in the public school system, they have to, it's like almost like kill to be killed now. It's like just the standards of peer pressure have changed so much. Um, there's not really much that you can really get into now. It's just all about yourself. Like social media has gotten a lot of people so stuck on themselves. It's just I don't really think that there is any such thing as an educated lame right now. And I'm talking about the kids. All right, when we get grown, this is when we have these educated lane arguments. So changing it's probably has already been changed. But like I say, like this is an older man's conversation, an older educated lame's conversation. When we start talking about the women that are left, all right, I don't know how much to truly say about this anymore. I got things to do today, but I wanted to point that out. So, you guys be cool. Sam Sim, peace.